This is Teresa with My Crochet Obsession, and today I want to show you another rose. This is the flared spiral rose. It's another large rose like the grandiflora that we made yesterday. It measures about 3.5 inches. It's flat on the back and it stands approximately 1 3/4 to 2 inches tall. Let's get started.
If you're following along with me in the 30 Days of Flowers and you already made the grandiflora rose, this flared rose will be a piece of cake. Once again, I'll be starting with my 5.5 millimeter hook and a worsted weight yarn from my stash. I'm using a lavender today, and roses do come in lavender. They're just not as common. And here in Texas, if you have a lavender rose, my brother loved lavender roses. But our sun is so strong that within a day or two, it bleaches them out and they're kind of gray. So that's what happens here. Anyway, I will be starting with my 5.5 millimeter crochet hook for my beginning chain. And then I'll be switching to my 5 millimeter so I can go back into that chain without too much of a struggle. I am using a few stitch markers for my chain count, and we begin with a slip knot on our hook, but you want to begin with a long measure of yarn because this is going to be another coiled rose like the grandiflora,
and we'll need a length of yarn in order to thread our yarn needle and go back and coil it up.
I know that this measurement on my working surface is 15 inches, so I'm going to leave 2 of those. That'll be more than enough yarn. So after that long measure, then I'm going to make my slip knot. It's going to seem like a lot of fidgety yarn to work around, but I find that this, if you don't do it this way, then you have to attach a piece of yarn in order to sew it together, and I just prefer not to do that. All right, chain up at 48.
As a sidebar, if you would like a smaller or a larger spiral rose, then change your number of beginning chains. There isn't a chain multiple for this rose as there was with the grandiflora.
And for beginners, a chain, once you have your slip knot on your hook, yarn over and pull through a loop. Yarn over, pull through a loop. And on every 12th stitch, I'm going to place a stitch marker. Just like that, until you arrive at a count of 48. Now I've arrived at my chain up of 48. I also coiled that yarn tail and ran the coil through a stitch marker, and then on the tail end I actually went through the plies of yarn to hold that so it's not so fidgety while I work. I forgot to turn my light on this morning. Oh, now that's better. Let there be light. All right, now let's change out the crochet hook and go to the smaller hook and yarn over and into the 3rd chain from the hook, double crochet. And I'm going into that back loop, which number 1 prevents the chain from twisting, and it also decreases the amount of shrinkage in my original chain. And double crochet into the back bump of the chain all the way down to the beginning slip stitch. And it's just that easy. And that's how the flared rose begins. We will be making a 2nd row of stitches on top of these, and I will meet up with you at the end of this row.
And my foundation chain and my foundation row is complete. And the crochet hook should be at the same end as your length of yarn. Now let's add the petals. Chain 3, and this counts as a treble crochet. Yarn over twice, turn your work, and insert the hook into the same stitch. And complete a treble crochet. Yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. And that is a treble crochet. Yarn over 2 times again and treble crochet back into that same stitch. And now begins the pattern repeat. 3 treble crochet into the top of each stitch for the entire row. Easy peasy. And I will meet up with you at the end of this row of 3 treble crochet into the top of each stitch from the previous.
Okay, we made it. And if your work looks all ruffledy like this, well, congratulations. That's exactly the way it's supposed to look in this flower. Now, after we get to the end with our 3 treble crochets all the way down our chain, then the way I finish it off, because this is going to be the under petal, the last petal. This end is our beginning end for the center of our flower. So the way I finish this off, because I want my yarn end to be over here in my chain. So I just come through and get into that middle loop of my treble crochet, and I give myself a little, you can do a single crochet or you could do a slip stitch. I just do a single crochet. And then I find another loop there, and if I can get into it. And I do the same thing. All I'm doing is just, walking my yarn over there. And into here. So I end up with about 4 stitches or 5 stitches, whatever works for you. Because I just want my yarn to be on this side. And if it doesn't bother you to have the yarn up here, then don't do this. And then I chain 1 more, pull up a loop, clip the yarn, and tie that off. Okay, we will address that yarn end when we get there. All right, now we come back down to where we left a very long yarn tail. And we get our yarn needle and this may look familiar because this is what we did with our Grandiflora rose if you've already made that, but if you haven't, then we thread our yarn needle and beginning in the center. Now this first part, I go ahead and we want the center of this rose. First of all, we're going to have the back of our stitches facing us. This is the front of the stitches, and the way you know, the front of them kind of cup in. And because we want this rose to flare, we're going to turn it over, and we're going to be using the back of our stitches facing us as we coil it up, just like this. But as we're working from the bottom, we're coiling it up in a counterclockwise position, okay? But we want the center of this flower to be in so that we have this little cup whenever we have our finished product. So I turn him down right from the beginning, okay? And coil him in there right from the start. All right, and so insert the hook, insert your yarn needle through there and grab him and back through. Gonna and then coil him up again in a counter. Oh, actually, no, I was wrong. Yeah, that's right.
As I'm stitching my spiral rows, I'm holding the beginning of the flower in my left hand and rolling it in a clockwise direction. In my right hand, I'm holding the remaining length of petals. I'm wrapping them in a counterclockwise direction, all the while holding the flower upside down.
All right, so then we're going to push our needle back and forth to secure that center well. Okay, and then coil around a little bit more, counterclockwise, because we're working from the bottom. If you're looking at it from the top, it is clockwise, but we're working from the bottom. We're coiling counterclockwise. All right, and back and forth, and secure that beginning rows all the way through. Now coil a little bit more. I'm going to go ahead and pull that yarn, my yarn needle through. Coil some more. Being mindful to keep it flat. This rose can have a little bit of a cone at the back, but still because of attaching it, you'll want to, so you see that's what's happening. Okay? All right. And don't stretch it tight, just coil it around gently. We're not stretching it, but and then we're just stitching it together. Back and forth. After that beginning coil was kind of tight, admittedly. But after that, it doesn't have to be tight. We're just coiling it around. And go back through, pulling the yarn needle is inserted near the center, and then out to that outside part of the new coil, and back in, and ending up back at the center again. And then with your yarn needle, come back into the center more again, and then back through to the new coil the new side of the coil that you're adding. Okay, and just come around with it. Again, that 30 inches of yarn looked like a long amount of yarn, but it takes a lot to attach this all together. Now, again, we're going to come through the entire base of the rows. And we can just come on through here with that yarn. Come on through there. And this time we can come back to the previous stitch on it and come all the way through to the next stitch. So we're kind of doing a zigzag back and forth. Remember, it doesn't have to be really tight. If you get it too tight, it just defeats the purpose of having this be the flared rose, because it's too tight. Okay, next stitch. And all the way through. And then we're ending up back at one of these stitches on the other side. By going all the way through, it helps keep the base kind of flat, which is for good for, you know, attaching it to something. And then I come back to the previous stitch because he's not been attached, and come back through to a stitch on the other side of my yarn end. Okay. And into the next stitch, and coming across to go into one of those previous stitches. And then back to one of the stitches that's not attached and across. Now this last petal, pull him a little bit snug and pull him over so that he won't lay out where it's visible that that's the end of your petals. And we can even come back through. We can do it with this yarn end and attach him a little bit better, because I'm going to do that with my yarn end, because I want to go back through here a little bit and secure these outer petals a little bit more. Use up my yarn, not too tight, because this starts adding bulk, because rather than slip stitch, if you'll go back and forth, it'll hide more of the yarn and create less bulk. If you slip stitch around and around, you're going to create a lot of bulk on this back side. This way the yarn is hidden. Just keep going through there, and it secures the space more. And uses up your yarn. You've got it on there anyway. All right. And that is the flared rose. It looks more modern. And this one is still a very much a three-dimensional rose. If you want to pull it in a little bit, make it not quite so flared, you can weave back and forth on your on the yarn. In fact, I do this most often because it just secures it a little bit. This is more of a modern rose. I use this more in freeform than I do in like a shawl, although it's good in a neck warmer. Okay, and then I weave back and forth on this last row around the stitches because I'm going to gather it up just a bit and cinch it up just a bit. So back and forth in between these last, and you may not want to do this. This is optional. If you like it big like it was, I like it just a little bit pulled in, a little bit tighter on these outside edges, outside petals. And I unthreaded my yarn needle because it's getting to the end. One thing you can do on the back of this also is when you get over to your yarn end, you can tie this, tightening it up just a bit. Because this is the bottom. This is most anything you're going to use it in. And see, that tightened it up just a bit. And then adjust this where he's definitely coiled in. In fact, I am going to tie this. I do this frequently on the back of flowers. I tie it, and then I still weave in the yarn ends though. I don't leave the raw edge of my cut out. I still weave it in. And right over left, left over right, right over left. It doesn't matter, just knot it 2 times. You can even do it more. And then I weave in those ends, and this flower is done. I like this flower. For one thing, it's a little less work than that grandiflora, but you know, it's a different look. But there's nothing wrong if you're doing a full rose kind of composition to have all different kinds. There's a couple more, and we will be making those. There is the what's called the centrifolia rose, which is a cabbage rose, and we form those petals where they definitely cup in quite a bit more than the grandiflora. And then we've got an Irish rose, and we have another ruffled rose. This is kind of a ruffled rose, but we have another ruffled rose too. And we'll make all of those so that you will have a lot of choices when you go to make some roses. All right, that should be woven in quite enough. And there we have our flared rose. And I like it. I like it a lot. And you can adjust it. And another thing you can do, if you don't want yours quite this tall, because it's still about 1 3/4 to 2 inches tall.
So with a threaded yarn needle, push the needle from the bottom of the flower all the way through the center and come up through that very first beginning spiral petal. And then we will thread back and forth through the beginning of that first petal, and then pull it back through to the back of the flower in order to pull that first spiral petal down. That accentuates the spiral effect and pulls the center of the flower in just a bit. And then once I get my yarn all the way through to the back, I tie it into a knot securely and clip the yarn and call it done.
First time, but I like it coiled just a little bit more to accentuate the spiral flared effect.
And this is our flared spiral rose. And it just now occurred to me, if you have need for a cinnamon roll, this would be the same way you would make it. Thank you for your time today. I have thoroughly enjoyed our time together, and I hope you'll give me a thumbs up for this tutorial. It lets me know what type of quality content that you would like to see more of. And it goes without saying, I'd love to have you as a subscriber with that notification bell activated so you'll know when I put up a new tutorial. And remember, be kind. Kindness is free. Spread it everywhere you go. And until I see you again, keep calm and crochet on.